Have you ever felt the breath of the desert at night? A current of air that is somehow older than the moon it reflects? Have you ever heard, in the sibilant whisper of sand skittering across stone, a voice that is not the wind, a language woven from heat and starlight and a silence that predates humankind? To stand in such a place, where the horizon dissolves into an ocean of dunes and the sky is a fathomless abyss of black and diamond, is to feel the presence of things unseen, of intelligences that move in the spaces between the worlds we know. It is to feel the ancient, palpable reality of the Djinn. These are not tales spun for the amusement of children around a dying fire, nor are they the sanitized genies of popular fable, bound to lamps and eager to serve. The truths we shall exhume this night are far more formidable. I am your guide through these shadow-shrouded realms, and I submit to you that these legends are a form of ancestral memory, truths about our world and ourselves etched not into parchment, but into the very soil and soul of a place. The Djinn are the living embodiment of the desert's character, its sudden, violent passions, its profound and terrible beauty, its capacity for both miraculous life and merciless death. They're a cosmology of fear and wonder made manifest. Our journey is a plunge into this primordial consciousness, an exploration of the beings born of smokeless fire who have watched empires rise from the dust and witnessed their return to it. We shall not merely recount their stories. We shall dissect them, seeking the psychological and sociological marrow within their ancient bones. We will venture through 7 distinct legends, 7 faces of a Djinn, from the imperious Merid who command the storms to the grotesque Ghoul who haunt the lonely places where travelers meet their end. Each is a key, and each unlocks a different chamber in a labyrinth of human dread. If you, like me, feel an inexorable pull towards the darkness not for its own sake, but for the wisdom it conceals, then you have found a sanctuary here. I invite you to join our community of seekers, to become a keeper of these vital, unnerving stories. Subscribe to our channel, and be certain to activate the notifications so that you are never lost when we next descend into the archives of the arcane. And as we proceed, I ask you to consider a question. Which of these ancient beings resonates most deeply with the fears that dwell within your own heart? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Our shared analysis will illuminate the path ahead. And now, with the formalities observed, let our journey into the smokeless fire truly begin. Our first exploration must begin at the source, with the very genesis of this parallel race. The legend of the Djinn's origin is not one of simple creation, but of cosmic precedence. Before the first man was shaped from clay and water, before the sun had looked upon a human face, there was the fire. Not the familiar fire of wood and wick, which casts a comforting yellow glow and leaves behind the residue of ash. This was a different fire, described in the ancient texts as a smokeless fire, a pure, scorching, and invisible energy, the very essence of elemental power. From this volatile substance, the Djinn were brought into being. They were, in essence, sentient constructs of energy, their forms as mutable as a flame, their minds as quick and searing as the heat that birthed them. This origin defines their fundamental nature. Unlike humankind, a creature of the earth, bound by gravity and the slow decay of flesh, the Djinn are beings of a subtler, more energetic dimension. They perceive realities we cannot, moving through the world not upon its surface, but within its hidden currents. They can pass through solid matter as a heat haze shimmers through the air, and their lifespans stretch across millennia, making the frantic brevity of human life seem as fleeting as the flicker of a single candle. They possess free will, a capacity for reason, faith, and disbelief that mirrors our own. Yet their passions are amplified, their loyalties more ferocious, and their hatreds as enduring as the desert rock. Their society is a complex tapestry of tribes and kingdoms, with rulers and subjects, scholars and warriors, righteous believers and profound apostates. They exist in a state of constant flux, an empire of fire and shadow layered just beneath the skin of our own mundane world. Their abilities are as varied as their forms. The most common power attributed to them is that of shape-shifting or to shackle. A Djinn might appear as a stray camel on the horizon, a venomous black serpent coiled in the shade of a rock, or even a sudden, inexplicable whirlwind that rises from the placid sand. They can assume human form, often of an unsettling beauty or a disquieting strangeness, their eyes retaining a hint of their fiery origin, a glint of something ancient and untamed. They are masters of illusion, capable of conjuring magnificent oases in the barren wastes to lure the thirsty and the desperate, only for the victim to find themselves clutching at hot sand as the vision dissolves into mocking laughter carried on the wind. They possess immense strength, can traverse vast distances in the blink of an eye, and hold knowledge of secrets buried deep within the earth. The location of hidden treasures, forgotten cities, and veins of precious ore. Yet for all their power, they're not gods. They are vulnerable to certain materials, particularly iron, which is said to disrupt their ethereal nature, and they can be bound by sacred words and powerful rituals, a fact that has led many a foolish mortal to their ruin. Consider the tale of Ibn al-Hakam, a scholar from the great city of Baghdad in the 9th century. He was a man not of faith, but of an insatiable, arrogant intellect. He dismissed the stories of the Djinn as the superstitious ramblings of uneducated Bedouins. For him, the world was a machine of discernible causes and effects, and he sought to write a grand treatise that would debunk all mythologies. He journeyed into the Rub al-Khali, the empty quarter, not with guides who respected the desert, but with instruments to measure the wind and charts to map the stars. He declared his purpose to any who would listen, to find a Djinn and prove it to be nothing more than a trick of the light, a meteorological anomaly, or a product of a sun-addled mind. One evening, camped beside a series of monolithic rock formations that hummed with the day's stored heat, he felt a change in the air. The wind died, and a profound silence fell, so complete that he could hear the blood pulsing in his ears. A pillar of sand began to rise nearby, but it did not spin like a common dust devil. It coalesced, tightened, and then solidified into the form of a tall, gaunt man, his skin the color of twilight sand and his eyes like chips of obsidian. The being did not speak, but Ibn al-Hakam heard its voice inside his own mind, a voice like grinding stones. "You seek to measure the immeasurable," it said. "You seek to capture the wind in a jar." Ibn al-Hakam, though shaken, held fast to his skepticism. He took out his parchment and began to sketch the being, noting its physical properties. "You are a hallucination," he stated, his voice trembling slightly. "A product of dehydration and suggestion." The Djinn smiled, a fissure in its sandy face. "And what is the clay of your body but a vessel for a fleeting thought? You believe your senses are the arbiters of reality. Let me show you what reality is." The Djinn gestured, and the scholar's world fractured. The stars began to fall from the sky like silver tears, burning holes in the dunes. The moon bled a sickly green light, and the rocks around him wept salt. He saw the history of every grain of sand, the birth and death of suns, the silent, screaming void between the worlds. He was shown the architecture of time itself, a structure so vast and complex that his mortal mind shattered against its immensity. When his companions found him the next morning, Ibn al-Hakam was alive, but his intellect was gone. He sat tracing meaningless patterns in the sand, his eyes wide and vacant, forever gazing upon the truths he had demanded to see. His treatise was never written, but his fate became a new and more potent legend. The story of Ibn al-Hakam serves as a potent metaphor. The Djinn, born of this smokeless, elemental fire, represent the forces of the universe that exist beyond the narrow confines of human perception and rational understanding. They are the chaos that churns beneath the surface of order, the primordial energies that science can name but never truly tame. To confront them, as the scholar did, with the arrogant assumption that they can be categorized and controlled by human intellect is the ultimate hubris. They symbolize the humbling truth that the cosmos is not made for us, and that our reality is but a single, fragile thread in an infinitely more complex and ancient tapestry. The smokeless fire is the raw, untamable potential of creation itself, and the Djinn are its children. To forget this is to invite madness. Their very existence is a cautionary whisper. There are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. From the foundational concept of the Djinn, we now ascend the ladder of their complex hierarchy to encounter their most formidable and imperious class, the Merid. If the Djinn are a nation, the Merid are its ancient and powerful aristocracy, its kings and queens who dwell not in the dusty ruins of the earth, but in the vast, open spaces of the sea and sky. The word Merid itself translates to rebellious or disobedient, signifying their immense pride and their refusal to bow to any power they deem lesser than their own, which, in their view, includes nearly everything. They are the largest and most powerful of their kind, often associated with water, ruling from palaces of coral and pearl beneath the waves, or commanding the very winds and storms from thrones of sculpted cloud. The physical profile of a Merid is one of majestic and terrifying grandeur. When they choose to manifest, they appear as colossal figures, their forms often semi-humanoid but grander, more elemental. They can appear as towering giants of swirling water vapor, their eyes like twin blue stars, their voices the resonant boom of thunder across the ocean. Unlike the lesser Djinn who might take the form of a humble animal, a Merid's transformations are always displays of power. A great waterspout connecting sea and sky, a living storm front crackling with lightning, or a leviathan of the deep whose passage churns the sea to foam. They are shapeshifters of immense skill, but their inherent arrogance often means they will not deign to take a form that is anything less than magnificent and awe-inspiring. Their supernatural abilities are commensurate with their stature. A Merid is a master of elemental magic, particularly concerning water and air. They can summon torrential rains to flood the desert, call forth hurricanes to splinter the mightiest ships, and grant wishes of a scale and scope that lesser Djinn could never contemplate. However, this power is tied to their immense ego. A Merid does not grant wishes out of servitude. It does so as an act of magnanimous condescension or as part of a complex bargain that almost always benefits itself in the long run. They are said to possess a profound, ancient wisdom, having witnessed the shaping of the world, but prying this knowledge from them is a perilous endeavor. To offend a Merid is to invite a cataclysm. They are proud, vengeful, and hold grudges that can span centuries. Their weakness, if it can be called that, is this very hubris. They can be trapped through flattery, manipulated by appealing to their vanity, and bound by rituals of immense complexity and power. But any who attempt such a feat are playing a game where the slightest misstep results in utter annihilation. The history of the coastal city of Ubar, the so-called Atlantis of the Sands, is inextricably linked with the legend of the Merid. For centuries, Ubar was a jewel of the peninsula, a hub of the frankincense trade, its wealth so legendary that it was spoken of in hushed, envious tones from Damascus to Rome. Its ruler in its final, glorious days was King Shaddad II, a man whose ambition was as vast as the desert itself. He was not content with a palace of marble and gold. He desired a paradise on earth, a garden that would rival the heavens. He poured the city's immense wealth into its construction, but no mortal architect could satisfy his vision. Driven by pride, Shaddad sought out a sorcerer, a man who knew the old ways and the names that could command the unseen. Together, they performed a great ritual on the shores of the Arabian Sea, a rite of summoning that lasted for 7 days and 7 nights. On the final night, as a storm of impossible fury raged offshore, a colossal figure rose from the waves. It was a Merid named Djinn, the weaver of mists, whose form was of swirling sea foam, and whose eyes held the cold light of the abyssal depths. Shaddad, protected within his circle of salt and iron, did not show fear. He He showed only avarice. He commanded the Merid to build him a city of unparalleled splendor, a new Iram of the pillars, with gardens watered by eternal springs and towers that would scrape the belly of the sky. The Merid, trapped by the sorcerer's binding, was enraged by the mortal's audacity. Yet it was bound. Djinn's voice was the grinding of continental plates. You asked for a paradise, mortal king. I will build you a monument to your pride, a city so beautiful it will make the gods weep with envy. But know this, when it is complete, its perfection will be your tomb. Shaddad, blinded by his vision, agreed to the terms. For a year, the Merid worked. A city rose from the desert floor, not of stone, but of some otherworldly, crystalline substance that shimmered with all the colors of the dawn. Water, a substance more precious than gold, flowed in rivers through its streets, and impossible flowers bloomed in hanging gardens that defied gravity. It was a masterpiece, a perfect sterile jewel. On the day of its completion, King Shaddad entered his paradise. He walked its silent, perfect streets, his heart swelling with a pride so immense it bordered on madness. He had commanded the powers of creation and bent them to his will. As he stood in the central courtyard, he raised his arms to the sky and declared, I am Shaddad, master of men and Djinn. I am equal of God. At that precise moment, the Merid's curse came to pass. The ground beneath the perfect city gave a single, violent shudder. The crystalline towers did not crumble. They remained pristine. But the city in its entirety sank beneath the sands as if into water, pulled down into a vast limestone cavern that had been hollowed out by the Djinn. It vanished in an instant, taking the arrogant king and his court with it. The desert winds swept over the spot, leaving no trace, save for the whispers of a lost city of splendor, a cautionary tale passed down by the Bedouins who knew that some beauties are too terrible to be borne by the world of men. The Merid, in its analytical interpretation, represents the terrifying power of nature and the cosmos, a force that is not hostile, but is profoundly indifferent to human ambition. King Shaddad embodies the technological and societal hubris of humanity, our belief that we can command the elements, reshape the world to our liking, and place ourselves at the center of the universe. The Merid's response is not one of simple malice. It is a cosmic correction. It gives the king exactly what he asks for, a city of unnatural perfection, and in its very perfection lies its doom. It is a sterile, lifeless beauty that cannot be sustained by the real world and is ultimately reclaimed by the earth. The Merid symbolizes the inescapable truth that for all our engineering and all our pride, we are subject to forces far older and more powerful than ourselves. They're the hurricanes that ignore our sea walls, the earthquakes that shatter our cities, and the vast, cold indifference of space. To challenge them is to be reminded, with devastating finality, of our own fragility. Now, we must descend from the celestial and oceanic realms of the Merid into the scorched, chthonic depths of human passion, for it is there that we encounter the Ifrit. If the Merid are the aloof, arrogant nobility of the Djinn, the Ifrit are their wrathful, diabolical soldiery. They are beings of immense power, not of elemental grandeur, but of concentrated, malevolent force. The Ifrit are intrinsically linked to the underworld, to the flames that burn beneath the earth, and to the concepts of vengeance and divine retribution. They are not merely mischievous or capricious. They are often depicted as instruments of justice, albeit a brutal and terrifying form of it. They are the enforcers, the punishers of the wicked, and the guardians of treasures and tombs who suffer no trespasser to live. An Ifrit's appearance is a vision of hellfire and shadow. They are often described as massive, winged creatures, their bodies a horrifying fusion of smoke, muscle, and fire. Their skin might be of charred obsidian or molten brass, with horns curling from their brows and great, leathery wings that beat the air with the sound of a furnace's roar. Their eyes are not mere lights, but burning coals that glow with an ancient, unquenchable fury. When they move, they leave a trail of scorched earth and the smell of sulfur in their wake. They are rarely subtle. An Ifrit's manifestation is an act of overwhelming intimidation, a declaration of power intended to shatter the courage of any who behold it. They are the embodiment of raw, destructive might, the personification of a conflagration. Their powers are a reflection of their violent nature. They command fire in all its forms, from subtle, internal combustion to explosive bursts of flame. They possess phenomenal strength, capable of lifting great rocks or tearing down the walls of a fortress. Unlike the Merid, who deal in grand, elemental displays, the Ifrit's magic is more direct, more personal, and far more cruel. They are masters of curses, able to inflict diseases, madness, and generations of misfortune upon those who have wronged them or violated a sacred space they protect. They are relentless and implacable. Once an Ifrit has been unleashed upon a target, it cannot be reasoned with, bribed, or deterred. It will pursue its victim across any distance, through any barrier, until its vengeance is satisfied. Their only known weaknesses are the most powerful forms of sacred law and ritual, and even these may only serve to temporarily bind or banish them, not destroy them. There's a dark legend from the annals of Ottoman Egypt concerning a cruel provincial governor named Al-Jazari. He was a man who ruled his desert province through fear, his greed, matched only by his sadism. He taxed the poor into starvation and took pleasure in their suffering. His greatest obsession was antiquities. He plundered countless ancient tombs, stealing the gold and jewels interred with the dead, desecrating the sacred resting places of pharaohs and priests alike. His collection, hidden in a secret vault beneath his palace, was said to be unrivaled. The local populace whispered that he was cursed, that the spirits of those he had robbed would one day claim their revenge. Al-Jazari laughed at their superstitions. His final act of sacrilege was the violation of a newly discovered tomb, one that local folklore claimed was not of a pharaoh, but of a pre-dynastic sorcerer king who had made pacts with beings of fire. The entrance was sealed with warnings in a language so ancient that none could fully decipher it, but the glyphs clearly depicted figures of flame and shadow. Al-Jazari ordered his men to break the seal. Inside, they found a simple sarcophagus of black basalt. When they forced it open, it did not contain a mummy wrapped in linen. It contained only ash and a single, enormous ruby that pulsed with a faint, inner light. Al-Jazari seized the gem, his eyes alight with triumph. That night, as he sat in his treasury admiring his prize, the ruby began to glow with intense heat, too hot to hold. He dropped it, and where it struck the stone floor, it did not land. It melted through the stone, and from the molten hole, a column of black smoke erupted. The smoke coalesced into the form of a towering Ifrit, its body wreathed in embers, its eyes promising an eternity of pain. The Ifrit did not speak in a voice, but in the crackle of a wildfire. Al-Jazari's guards rushed in, but their swords melted before they could strike, and their bodies were reduced to cinders. The Ifrit was not swift in its vengeance. It was methodical. It first destroyed every object Al-Jazari had stolen, melting the gold, turning the jewels to dust, erasing his collection from existence. Then, it turned to the governor. It did not kill him. Instead, it laid a curse upon him. "You who have profaned the silence of the dead shall know no silence," it hissed. "You who have stolen that which was buried shall yourself be buried in everlasting fire." The Ifrit vanished, and Al-Jazari was left alive, but his palace began to burn with a strange, black fire that could not be quenched by water. It had not consumed the stone, but it burned eternally upon its surface. The governor himself was afflicted with a curse of sound. He could hear the agonized whispers of every soul whose tomb he had desecrated, a constant, maddening chorus that drove him to insanity. He spent his final days locked in the highest tower of his perpetually burning palace, a screaming madman tormented by the ghosts of his own avarice until his body finally gave out. The palace, a blackened, smoldering ruin, stands to this day, a place the locals call Qasr al-Ifrit, the castle of the Ifrit. In psychological terms, The Ifrit is the personification of repressed rage and the primal demand for justice. It is the eruption of the ID, the violent consequence that follows a profound transgression against the natural or moral order. While society may fail to punish the wicked, the Ifrit represents a cosmic certainty that the scales will eventually be balanced, often in a terrifyingly literal fashion. Al-Jazari's greed and sacrilege represent a violation of the collective unconscious, a disrespect for the past, for the dead, and for the sacred. The Ifrit is the inevitable backlash. It doesn't just punish the man, it systematically erases his legacy, his ill-gotten wealth, thereby restoring a symbolic order. It embodies the deep-seated human belief that some crimes are so heinous they call out to the universe for a response. And the universe, in this mythology, responds with fire and fury. The Ifrit is a necessary monster, a reminder that every action has a consequence, and that the graves of the past should be left undisturbed, lest we awaken the flames that sleep within them. From the focused, fiery vengeance of the Ifrit, our path now leads us away from the grand theater of curses and cosmic justice into the lonely, whispering emptiness of the desert itself. Here, in the vast and desolate spaces between oases, we encounter a creature born of primal hunger and existential dread, the ghoul. Known in the West as the ghoul, this entity is far more complex and terrifying than the simple carrion eater of modern fiction. The ghoul is a shape-shifting desert demon, a haunter of graveyards and desolate roads, a being whose primary purpose is to lure travelers to their doom, to mislead, and to consume. It is the embodiment of the desert's most terrifying aspect, its ability to swallow a person whole, leaving not a trace behind. The ghoul is defined by its ambiguity. It has no single, fixed form. Its most common appearance is that of a grotesque, demonic humanoid, often with canine or hyena-like features, long, taloned fingers, and eyes that glow like dying embers in the dark. It is said to have hooves like a donkey or goat, a detail that betrays its unnatural nature even when it adopts a different guise. And it is this ability to change its shape that makes it so deadly. A ghoul can appear as a beautiful woman, standing alone by a roadside, beckoning a lone traveler to approach. It can take the form of a trusted friend or a family member, appearing on the horizon to lead a lost caravan towards a phantom oasis. It can even mimic the voices of loved ones, calling out from the darkness to draw a victim away from the safety of the campfire. Its true form is rarely seen until the final, horrific moments. The powers of the ghoul are centered around deception and predation. Beyond its masterful shape-shifting, it is a creature of immense speed and stamina, able to run down the swiftest camel over the open sand. It is most powerful at night, drawing strength from the darkness and the moon. Its primary motivation is a ravenous, insatiable hunger for human flesh. It is not merely a scavenger that feeds on the dead. It is an active predator that creates the dead upon which it feeds. It haunts graveyards, not only to consume the recently buried, but also to lie in wait for mourners who visit the graves of their loved ones. Legends speak of the ghoul's particular fondness for the flesh of children. Its only known weaknesses are said to be a single, decisive blow from a pure iron weapon, which can kill it, and a deep-seated fear of loud noises and bright, sudden flashes of light, which can temporarily drive it away. There is a chilling story told by the caravanners of the Nafud Desert, a tale of two brothers, Hassan and Ali, who were merchants of spices and silks. Hassan was the elder, a cautious and pious man who knew the desert and respected its dangers. Ali was young, impulsive, and prone to dismissing his brother's warnings as superstition. On a journey to the markets of Hafar al-Batin, they became separated from their caravan in a sudden sandstorm. When the storm cleared, they were alone, with only 2 camels and a dwindling supply of water. Hassan, consulting the stars, knew they had to travel west. But as dusk fell, Ali spotted a faint light to the east. "Look, brother," he exclaimed. "A campfire. The caravan must be that way." Hassan was wary. The light seemed to flicker strangely, and no other signs of a large camp were visible. He warned Ali that the desert played tricks on the eyes of the desperate. As they argued, they heard a voice on the wind, a woman's voice calling for help. It sounded faint and desperate. Ali, his heart moved by pity and his judgment clouded by thirst, was determined to investigate. Hassan begged him not to go, reminding him of the old tales of the ghoul, the Mgullah who lures men with a woman's cry. "You are a coward ruled by old wives' tales." Ali sneered. "I will not leave someone to die while you cower here with your ghosts." Spurring his camel, Ali rode off towards the light. Hassan, torn between fear and love for his brother, followed at a distance, his hand never leaving the hilt of his iron-bladed sword. He watched as Ali reached a small, isolated encampment, where a single, beautiful woman sat by a fire. He saw his brother dismount, captivated. He saw the woman offer Ali a drink from a water skin. Hassan crept closer, his heart pounding. He hid behind a rock outcropping, and what he saw froze his blood. As Ali drank, the woman's form began to change. Her beautiful face elongated into a monstrous hyena-like snout. Her delicate hands grew into gnarled claws. Her feet, beneath the hem of her robe, were the cloven hooves of a goat. The ghoul lunged, and Ali's scream was cut short. Hassan, overcoming his terror with a surge of rage and grief, burst from his hiding place. He roared his brother's name, and with a single, desperate swing of his sword, he struck the creature as it loomed over Ali's body. The iron blade bit deep, and the ghoul let out a shriek that was not of this world, a sound of grinding rock and tearing flesh, before it dissolved into a foul-smelling black dust. Hassan was left alone in the sudden, crushing silence of the desert, with the body of his brother and the terrible knowledge that the old tales were true. He was found days later by a passing patrol, half-mad with grief and dehydration, forever haunted by the glowing eyes in the dark. The ghoul is a powerful psychological and sociological metaphor. Sociologically, it represents the real and ever-present dangers of the untamed wilderness. In a landscape like the Arabian desert, getting lost or separated from your group is a death sentence. The ghoul is the narrative embodiment of that danger, a story that encodes a vital survival lesson. Do not stray from the group. Do not trust strange lights. Do not follow mysterious voices. It is a cautionary tale that reinforces community cohesion and adherence to proven survival strategies. Psychologically, the ghoul is the monster of the liminal space. It represents the fear of the unknown and the terror of betrayal. It takes on the appearance of safety, beauty, and familiarity, a helping hand, a beautiful woman, a trusted friend, and reveals it to be a mask for a devouring horror. This speaks to a deep anxiety about the true nature of reality and the intentions of others. The ghoul is the ultimate predator because it attacks not just the body, but the mind's ability to trust its own perceptions. It is the chilling whisper that asks, what if the things you most desire are the very things that will destroy you? Leaving the earthly horrors of the ghoul, we now drift into a more ethereal and psychologically insidious domain, the realm of illusion and fatal allure. Here we meet the Sealat, a class of Djinn that are in many ways the most subtle and tragic of their kind. The Sealat are female Jinniya of bewitching, almost supernatural beauty. They are not mindless predators like the ghoul, nor are they beings of cosmic power like the Merid. They are intelligent, cunning, and often lonely creatures who inhabit oases and the magical borderlands between the desert and civilization. Their legend is a complex tapestry of desire, deception, and the profound dangers of confusing illusion for reality. Unlike the monstrous ghoul, the Sealat's appearance is her primary weapon. She manifests as a human woman of such breathtaking beauty that she can mesmerize any man who lays eyes upon her. Her form is perfect, her voice is like music, and her eyes hold the promise of paradise. She is the ultimate object of desire, an oasis of flesh in the barren landscape of a lonely traveler's heart. However, like all Djinn, she cannot perfectly mimic the human form. There is always a subtle flaw, a telltale sign of her true nature. Most commonly, her feet are said to be those of a donkey or an ass, a feature she takes great pains to hide beneath long robes or in the soft sand of the oasis. This single, grotesque detail beneath the facade of perfection is the key to her legend. The powers of a Seelat are almost entirely based on seduction and illusion. She does not wield fire or command storms. She wields human emotion. She can read the deepest desires in a man's heart and project an image of herself that perfectly matches his fantasy. She is a master of trickery, able to make a man believe he has found his soulmate, a life of ease and pleasure, when in reality he is becoming ensnared in her web. Her motivations are often debated. Some tales portray her as a malevolent entity who lures men to their deaths, either by slowly draining their life force or by killing them in a fit of rage if her true nature is discovered. Other, more melancholic stories depict her as a tragic figure, a being incapable of true connection, who marries a human man in a desperate attempt to experience love, only for the union to be doomed from the start by her otherworldly nature. Her weakness is the discovery of her secret. If a man sees her animal-like feet and names her for what she is, her power is broken, and she will often vanish in a cloud of smoke or a fit of sorrowful rage. A famous tale from the Hadramaut region of Yemen speaks of a young pearl diver named Khalid. He was a man of simple means, but possessed a romantic soul, and he was deeply lonely. One day, after a storm had cast his small boat ashore far from his village, he stumbled inland and discovered a hidden oasis he had never seen before. In the center of this lush paradise, bathing in a crystal-clear pool, was a woman of incandescent beauty. Her name, she said, was Layla. Khalid was instantly enchanted. She seemed to be everything he had ever dreamed of. They spoke for hours, and by nightfall, he was utterly in her thrall. She invited him to stay with her in her small, elegant tent, and for what felt like days, he lived in a state of perfect bliss. She catered to his every need. Her love was all-consuming, and the oasis provided for them without any need for work. Khalid forgot about his old life, his village, his family. This oasis, this woman, was his entire world. But small, strange things began to trouble the edges of his perfect reality. He never saw her eat human food, only strange, fragrant herbs that grew by the pool. At night, he would sometimes hear her whispering to the wind in a language that was not of men. And most peculiar of all, she would never allow him to see her feet, always keeping them tucked beneath her or buried in the sand. One afternoon, while she was sleeping, his curiosity finally overcame his love. He gently lifted the hem of her silken robe. He gasped. Her feet were not human feet. They were the hard, gray, cloven hooves of a donkey. In that instant, the illusion shattered. The lush oasis around him flickered, and he saw it for what it was, a patch of barren rock and scrub, littered with the sun-bleached bones of other men. The beautiful Layla in his arms became a gaunt, sorrowful creature with eyes that burned with a cold, green fire. She shrieked, a sound of heartbreak and fury, and struck him. He was thrown backwards, and when he looked up, she was gone. Khalid scrambled away from the cursed place, a broken man. He returned to his village an old man. Though he had been gone for only a week, his hair white, his mind forever scarred by the memory of a perfect love that was a perfect lie. The legend of the Seelat is a profound psychological allegory about the nature of infatuation and illusion. She represents the idealized object of desire, the fantasy we project onto another person. Khalid's experience is a metaphor for the intoxicating, all-consuming nature of a new romance, a state in which the world seems to transform into a paradise and the beloved can do no wrong. The Seelat's hidden hooves symbolize the inevitable, flawed reality that lies beneath the surface of any idealized projection. The moment Khalid sees the hooves, the moment he confronts the imperfect truth, the entire fantasy collapses. The story serves as a powerful cautionary tale against losing oneself in illusion and wishful thinking. It warns that a love or a life that seems too perfect is likely built on a foundation of deception, either from another or, more dangerously, from oneself. The silat teaches a harsh lesson. True connection cannot be built on fantasy, and the price of ignoring the unsettling truth right at your feet is the loss of your own soul. We now turn from the deceptions of the heart to the corruption of the soul. Our journey takes us into the realm of the shaitan, a name that resonates with a universal dread. In Western contexts, this term is often simplified to Satan or devils, but in its original folklore, the reality is more nuanced and far more personal. The shaitan are not a single entity, but a specific class of Djinn, those who, under the leadership of their patriarch Iblis, rebelled against the divine order. They're the tempters, the whisperers, the agents of moral and spiritual decay. Their goal is not outright destruction like an ifrit, nor physical consumption like a ghoul. Their aim is far more insidious, to lead humanity astray, to foster doubt, to encourage vice, and to sever the connection between a person and their sense of faith, honor, and purpose. The shaitan are masters of subtlety. Their physical appearance is rarely a monstrous, horned caricature. In fact, they seldom appear physically at all. They are beings of the periphery, of the unseen. Their presence is felt as a nagging doubt, a sudden, selfish impulse, a whisper of pride in the quiet of one's mind. They are the voice that encourages you to take the easier, more dishonest path. They're the feeling of envy that curdles into resentment, the spark of anger that blossoms into a destructive rage. When they do take a form, it is often that of a wise old man offering questionable advice, a charming stranger encouraging decadence, or even the guise of a pious figure twisting sacred words to justify profane actions. Their true form is said to be one of shadow and fleeting darkness, a presence without substance. The power of a shaitan is entirely psychological and spiritual. They do not throw fireballs or move mountains. They manipulate human weakness. Their primary ability is the waswas, the insidious whisper into the heart. They study a person, learn their fears, their vanities, their secret shames, and then they craft bespoke temptations designed to exploit those specific vulnerabilities. They promote discord, turning friends against each other with rumors and suspicion. They encourage hubris in the successful, despair in the unfortunate, and apathy in the comfortable. They are the architects of addiction, the patrons of greed, and the grandmasters of self-deception. Their ultimate victory is not a person's death, but a person's willing and conscious choice to abandon their own moral compass, to become a hollow vessel of their basest instincts. Their only weakness is a strong and sincere faith, a disciplined mind, and the conscious recognition of their whispers for what they are, the empty promises of a nihilistic parasite. Consider the legend of Yusuf the Weaver from the old city of Fez. Yusuf was renowned throughout the Maghreb for his skill. The carpets he wove were not mere floor coverings. They were works of art, their colors vibrant, their patterns so intricate they seemed to contain the wisdom of the universe. Yusuf was a humble and devout man who saw his skill as a gift from God, and he worked with a joyful, meditative focus. His fame grew, and soon a summons came from the Sultan himself. The Sultan commissioned Yusuf to weave a carpet for the main prayer hall of the Grand Mosque, a carpet more magnificent than any the world had ever seen. The honor was immense, and Yusuf began his work with a pure heart. But as he worked, a subtle change began within him. He started to feel a flicker of pride. He was not just a humble artisan. He was the greatest weaver in the world. A voice, which he first mistook for his own, began to whisper to him as he sat at his loom. "Your skill is not a gift," it would say. "It is your own genius. You are the equal of the great poets and architects. Why should the Sultan receive all the glory for your work?" At first, Yusuf ignored the voice, but it was persistent. He found himself growing resentful of the commission. He began to cut corners, using slightly inferior dyes to save money, a fact he knew no one but he would ever notice. The whispers grew bolder. "A man of your talent should be a sultan himself. This carpet will be your legacy. Weave your own name into its border. hidden in the calligraphy. Let the truly discerning know who created this masterpiece. Torn between his faith and his burgeoning ego, Yusuf succumbed. He painstakingly wove his own name into the intricate border, a secret act of rebellion and pride. The moment he tied the final knot, the joy he had once felt in his work was gone, replaced by a gnawing anxiety. He presented the carpet to the Sultan, and it was hailed as a miracle of art. But Yusuf could find no pleasure in the praise. That night, he had a terrible dream. He saw his beautiful carpet, but it was crawling with scorpions and snakes, its once vibrant colors turned to ash and blood. The voice from his mind was there, laughing. "The carpet is beautiful," it mocked, "but your soul is now a threadbare rag." Yusuf awoke in a cold sweat. He realized he had been corrupted not by a grand temptation, but by 1,000 tiny whispers of pride. His great work had become a monument to his own spiritual failure. He lived out his days a wealthy and famous man, but he never wove again, for the joy and the purity of his art had been stolen from him forever. The shaitan is a powerful metaphor for the internal, psychological struggle between the ego and the self, between our higher aspirations and our basest instincts. It is the personification of what modern psychology might call the shadow self, the repository of our greed, our pride, our envy, and our resentments. The story of Yusuf is a masterful illustration of how corruption is often not a single, dramatic event, but a gradual process of small compromises and subtle self-deceptions. The shaitan's whispers represent the internal monologue of rationalization that allows us to justify our own unethical behavior. The legend teaches that the greatest battles are not fought against external monsters, but against the insidious enemies within our own minds. The shaitan is not a demon with a pitchfork. It is the part of ourselves that, if left unchecked, will lead us to weave our own damnation thread by thread. Our final journey takes us to the very fringes of folklore, to a creature so bizarre and so contrary to the laws of nature that its very existence serves as a warning against cosmic imbalance. We encounter the Nasnas, a being that represents not malice or temptation, but the horror of biological and spiritual corruption made flesh. The Nasnas is not a primary class of Djinn like the Merid or Ifrit. It is believed to be the monstrous offspring of a union between a shaitan and a human, a grotesque hybrid that embodies the unnaturalness of such a pairing. The physical description of the Nasnas is a study in macabre asymmetry. It is quite literally half a person. It is described as having half a head, half a torso, one arm, and one leg. It moves not by walking, but by hopping on its single leg with incredible speed and agility, often compared to the bounding of a gazelle. Its face has one eye, half a nose, and half a mouth, for which it emits a strange, whistling cry. Its flesh is sometimes said to be pale and boneless, adding to its disturbing, fluid motion. The creature is a living, breathing violation of bilateral symmetry, a fundamental principle of most advanced life forms. Its appearance is not just frightening. It is profoundly unsettling, an affront to the natural order. The Nasnas is a predator, but not a cunning one. It is a creature of instinct. It is said to inhabit remote coastal areas or the deepest parts of the forest, far from human civilization. It hunts animals, and if the opportunity arises, humans, killing them with its single, powerful arm and then consuming their flesh. Unlike the ghoul, it does not use deception. Its horror lies in its direct, physical presence. To see a Nasnas is to witness a fundamental law of creation being broken. Some legends attribute to it the ability to kill with a single touch, its unnatural biology carrying a fatal contagion. Others say that anyone who survives an encounter with a Nasnas is left spiritually scarred, their mind unable to reconcile the creature's impossible existence. A brief but chilling tale is told by fishermen near the Musandam Peninsula, a rugged and isolated landscape of fjords and mountains. A young man named Ferris, known for his recklessness, boasted that he would spend a night alone on a cursed, desolate island where no one dared to venture, a place rumored to be a haunt of the Nasnas. His friends warned him, but he laughed off their fears. He set out at dusk in his small boat, promising to return at dawn with a story to shame their cowardice. The night was still and moonless. As Ferris sat by a small fire, he heard a strange sound from the rocks above, a rhythmic, wet, hopping sound, accompanied by a low, plaintive whistle. He grabbed his spear and peered into the darkness. He saw a shape detach itself from the shadows, a shape that his mind refused to process. It was half a man, bounding towards him with terrifying speed on a single leg. It's when I was fixed on him with a blank, predatory hunger. Ferris was paralyzed by a horror that went beyond simple fear. It was a deep, soul-level revulsion. The creature leaped, its one arm outstretched. The next morning, his friends found his boat adrift. They ventured onto the island and found the remains of his campfire. And beside it, they found Ferris. He was physically unharmed, but his mind was gone. He sat staring at his own hands, endlessly opening and closing them, as if trying to reassure himself that he was whole. He never spoke another word. The Nasnas serves as a powerful symbol of the unnatural. It is cosmic horror in its purest form. While other Djinn represent understandable human fears, vengeance, temptation, the dangers of the wild, the Nasnas represents the fear of the fundamentally wrong, the impossible made real. It is a metaphor for hybridity gone awry, a cautionary tale against the mixing of disparate and incompatible natures. In a pre-modern world where bloodlines, species, and spiritual categories were rigidly defined, the Nasnas was the ultimate abomination. It symbolizes the belief that some boundaries between human and spirit, sacred and profane, natural and unnatural, are not meant to be crossed, and the consequence of crossing them is not a simple punishment, but the creation of a monstrosity that taints reality itself. The Nasnas is a fragment, a broken piece of a creature, and its horror is a final, chilling reminder that not all things in the universe are meant to be whole. And so, our long journey through the shifting sands of legend draws to its close. We have stood in the invisible presence of the Djinn, born of smokeless fire, and felt the ancient heat of their existence. We have gazed upon the prideful, elemental grandeur of the Merid, the storm kings of the cosmos. We have recoiled from the fiery, implacable vengeance of the Ifrit, the enforcers of a brutal, cosmic justice. We have followed the deceptive lights of the Ghoul into the devouring emptiness of the desert, and been ensnared by the tragic, illusory beauty of the Sealat. We have listened to the insidious, corrupting whispers of the Shaitan in the quiet chambers of the human heart, and we have confronted the sheer, unnatural horror of the Nasnas, the broken creature from the edge of reality. What wisdom, then, have we gleaned from these 7 faces of fear? What single truth unites these disparate spirits of the Arabian Night? It is this: the Djinn, in all their varied and terrifying forms, are a mirror. They are not merely external monsters that haunt the desolate places of the world. They are the externalization of the desolate places within ourselves. They are the personification of our own hubris, our own rage, our own insatiable hungers and fatal illusions. They are the whispers of our own egos and the monstrous shapes of our deepest anxieties about the fundamental nature of reality. The desert did not invent the Djinn, it revealed them. They are a reflection of humanity, cast in fire and shadow against the vast, empty canvas of the wilderness. In these ancient stories, we find a profound and enduring psychology. They teach us that the line between our world and another, more dangerous one, is perilously thin. They warn us that pride invites a cosmic fall, that sacrilege awakens a terrible vengeance, and that the greatest dangers often were the most beautiful masks. They remind us that the most significant battles are fought not with swords of iron, but with the discipline of the mind and the sincerity of the soul. These are not just stories. They are survival guides for the human spirit, passed down through generations, as vital and as unforgiving as the desert that gave them birth. By watching this, by listening to these words, You have done more than entertain a fleeting curiosity. You have become a participant in an ancient tradition, a keeper of the stories that keep us human by reminding us of what lies just beyond the edges of our humanity. To ensure this wisdom is not lost to the indifferent winds of time, I urge you once more to subscribe to our channel. Share these stories with those who, like you, are unafraid to look into the shadows. And leave your final thoughts in the comments below, for it is in our shared dialogue that these legends remain alive and potent. The best monsters are always the ones that show us something true about ourselves. They're the fragments of our own psyches, given form and a terrible voice. The Djinn are perhaps the most honest of all monsters, for they have never pretended to be anything other than what they are. Beings of fire and free will, a parallel existence that forces us to question the solidity of our own. May your nights be free from the whispers of the shaitan, and may your journeys through the deserts of your own life be guided by wisdom rather than illusion. Until our paths cross again in the gloaming, remain vigilant, remain questioning, and listen closely to the silence. It has more to tell you than you could ever imagine.